The sun beat down on the dusty trail like a hammer on an anvil, and Benjamin Carter thought he might be riding straight into hell itself as he made his way through the barren stretch of Texas desert between El Paso and San Elizario in the sweltering summer of 1878. Benjamin had been riding for 3 days straight, delivering a herd of cattle to a ranch outside of El Paso, and now he was making his way back to San Elizario, where he worked as a ranch hand for the McLaughlin spread. The heat shimmered off the ground in waves, distorting the horizon into a watery mirage that promised relief, but delivered only more scorching earth. His horse, a sturdy bay mare named Copper, plodded along with her head low, and Benjamin rationed the water in his canteen carefully, giving her small amounts from his hat every few hours. He was about 10 miles outside of San Elizario when he spotted something unusual on the side of the trail. At first he thought it might be a coyote or perhaps some brush that had blown across the path, but as he drew closer, his heart seized in his chest. It was a woman, lying crumpled on the ground like a discarded rag doll, her dark hair spread across the dirt, her traveling dress torn and dusty. Benjamin dismounted quickly, his boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. He approached cautiously, unsure if she was alive or if he had stumbled upon some terrible tragedy. As he knelt beside her, he could see her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. She was alive, but barely. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, her skin flushed red from the sun, and when he gently touched her shoulder, her skin felt like fire beneath his fingers. "Madam," he said softly, his voice rough from his own thirst. "Madam, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, and she made a small sound, something between a moan and a whisper. Benjamin did not hesitate. He reached for his canteen, knowing he had perhaps 2 days' worth of water left for himself and his horse, but also knowing he could not leave this woman to die in the desert. He uncapped the canteen and gently lifted her head, cradling it in the crook of his arm. "Here now," he murmured. "Just a little at first, not too much or you will be sick." He pressed the canteen to her lips and let a small trickle of water flow into her mouth. She coughed at first, then her eyes flew open, wide and desperate, and she tried to grab the canteen with trembling hands. Her eyes were the most striking shade of green Benjamin had ever seen, like spring grass after a rain. "Easy," he said, pulling the canteen back slightly. "Slow. You have got to go slow." She nodded weakly, and he gave her another small sip, then another. After a few minutes, some color began to return to her cheeks, and her breathing became less labored. She looked up at him with those extraordinary green eyes, and he could see tears forming at the corners. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse and barely audible. "I thought I was going to die." "What happened to you?" Benjamin asked, looking around for any sign of a wagon or horse. "Where did you come from?" "My wagon," she said, closing her eyes as if the memory pained her. 2 days ago. The wheel broke, and my driver, he took the horse and said he would bring back help. He never came back." Benjamin felt anger flare in his chest. What kind of man would leave a woman alone in the desert without water or protection? He pushed the anger down and focused on the immediate problem. This woman needed shelter and proper care, and they were still a good distance from town. "Can you stand?" he asked. She tried, but her legs buckled immediately, and Benjamin caught her before she fell. She was lighter than he expected, and he could feel how weak she had become from her ordeal. There was no way she could ride on her own. "All right," he said, making a decision. "I am going to put you on my horse and I will walk alongside. San Elizario is not too far, maybe 3 hours if we keep a steady pace." "Your horse," she protested weakly. "The water." "I will manage," Benjamin said firmly. "Right now, getting you to safety is what matters." He lifted her onto Copper's back, settling her in the saddle and making sure she could hold on to the pommel. She swayed slightly, and he steadied her with a hand on her back. "What is your name?" he asked as he took Copper's reins and began leading them toward town. "Rebecca," she said softly. "Rebecca Ashford." "I am Benjamin Carter," he replied. "Just hold on, Miss Ashford. We will get you to town and get you proper help." The walk to San Elizario was long and brutal. The sun continued to beat down mercilessly, and Benjamin felt his own strength flagging as the miles stretched on. He gave Rebecca small sips of water every half hour and shared what little remained with Copper. His throat felt like sandpaper, and his legs ached with every step, but he kept moving, driven by a determination he could not quite explain. Rebecca drifted in and out of consciousness during the journey, sometimes murmuring things he could not quite make out. Once, she said a name, Daniel, and Benjamin wondered if she had a husband or sweetheart waiting for her somewhere. The thought caused an unexpected pang in his chest, which he promptly ignored. When San Elizario finally came into view, Benjamin felt a wave of relief wash over him. The small town sat along the Rio Grande, a collection of adobe buildings and wooden structures that had served as a waypoint for travelers and traders for generations. The mission church stood at the center of town, its bell tower visible from a distance. Benjamin headed straight for the home of Dr. Wendell Morrison, a gruff but competent physician who had treated everything from gunshot wounds to influenza in his 30 years of practice. The doctor's house was on the east side of town, a modest adobe structure with a red door that signaled his profession. Benjamin pounded on the door with his fist, not caring about propriety. "Dr. Morrison, I need help." The door opened almost immediately, revealing the doctor himself, a man in his 50s with gray hair and sharp blue eyes that took in the situation instantly. "Bring her inside," he said without preamble, stepping aside to let Benjamin carry Rebecca into the house. The interior was blessedly cool, and Benjamin laid Rebecca on the examination table in the doctor's office. Dr. Morrison immediately began his assessment, checking her pulse, looking at her eyes, examining her sun-damaged skin. "Heat exhaustion, dehydration," he muttered. "How long was she out there?" She said 2 days, Benjamin replied. "Her wagon broke down and her driver abandoned her." The doctor's expression darkened. "Coward! She is lucky you found her. Another day and she would have been past saving." He looked at Benjamin critically. "You do not look much better yourself. When did you last drink?" "I had enough," Benjamin said, though his voice came out more cracked than he intended. "Sit," the doctor ordered, pointing to a chair. "I will tend to you both." Over the next hour, Dr. Morrison worked efficiently, giving Rebecca fluids and treating her sunburned skin with a salve that smelled of aloe and herbs. He made Benjamin drink water slowly, cautioning him against drinking too much too quickly. As Rebecca's condition stabilized, she fell into a deep, healing sleep. "She will need to stay here for a few days," the doctor said. "Her body needs time to recover." "You did a good thing, Benjamin. A very good thing." Benjamin nodded, feeling exhaustion finally catching up with him. "I should let her people know she is safe. Does she have family here?" "I do not know," the doctor said. "We will have to ask her when she wakes up properly. For now, you should go home and rest. You have done your part." But Benjamin found himself reluctant to leave. He told himself it was just because he wanted to make sure Rebecca was truly all right, that it was simple human decency and nothing more. Yet as he looked at her sleeping form, her dark hair now clean and brushed back from her face, he felt something stir in his chest that had nothing to do with duty or decency. "I will come back tomorrow," he said finally, "to check on her." Dr. Morrison gave him a knowing look, but said nothing, simply nodding his agreement. Benjamin left the doctor's house and made his way to the boarding house where he rented a room. San Elizario was small enough that everyone knew everyone else's business, and by the time he had washed up and changed into clean clothes, half the town had already heard about the woman he had rescued from the desert. Mrs. Patterson, who ran the boarding house, cornered him at supper. She was a round woman with kind eyes and an insatiable curiosity about other people's lives. "I heard you saved a woman's life today," she said, ladling stew into his bowl with an enthusiasm that suggested she expected a full accounting of the story. "I just gave her some water and brought her to town," Benjamin said, trying to downplay the situation. "Oh, do not be modest," Mrs. Patterson said. "Martha Jenkins saw you carrying her into the doctor's house, said she looked half dead. You are a hero, Benjamin Carter." Benjamin felt his face flush. "I am no hero. Anyone would have done the same." "That is where you are wrong," said Mr. Patterson, who sat at the head of the table. He was a retired Texas Ranger, a man who had seen the worst of human nature. "There are plenty of folks who would have ridden right past her, told themselves it was not their problem. You did the right thing, son." The praise made Benjamin uncomfortable, and he focused on his stew, hoping the conversation would move on to other topics. But throughout the evening, he found his thoughts returning to Rebecca Ashford, wondering about her story, about where she had been going and why she had been traveling through such dangerous country. That night, he slept fitfully, his dreams filled with images of desert sun and green eyes. The next morning, Benjamin headed to Dr. Morrison's house before starting his work at the McLaughlin Ranch. He found Rebecca awake, sitting up in bed in a borrowed nightgown, her color much improved though she still looked fragile. "Mr. Carter," she said when she saw him, and her face lit up with a genuine smile that made his heart skip. "The doctor told me everything you did. I cannot thank you enough. You saved my life." "I am just glad I came along when I did," Benjamin said, feeling awkward under the weight of her gratitude. "How are you feeling?" "Much better," she said. "Weak still, but the doctor says I will make a full recovery." Her expression grew troubled. "I feel terrible about the water. The doctor said you gave me most of what you had. You could have died yourself." "But I did not," Benjamin said simply. "And neither did you. That is all that matters." They looked at each other for a long moment, and Benjamin felt something pass between them, some unspoken connection that made the air feel charged with possibility. "Tell me about yourself, Miss Ashford," he said, pulling up a chair beside the bed. "What brings you to this part of Texas?" Rebecca's expression grew sad. "I was coming here to start a new life," she said. "My husband died 6 months ago, influenza, and there was nothing left for me in St. Louis. My late mother's sister lives in San Elizario, or at least she did 5 years ago when she last wrote. I was hoping to find her here to perhaps make a fresh start." Benjamin felt relief flood through him at the word late, followed immediately by guilt at feeling such a thing. The woman was a widow still in mourning. "What is your aunt's name?" he asked. "San Elizario is small. I might know her." "Margaret Sullivan," Rebecca said hopefully. Benjamin's face fell. "Mrs. Sullivan passed away last winter," he said gently. "Pneumonia, I am sorry." The hope drained from Rebecca's face and she looked down at her hands. "I see," she said quietly. "Then I am truly alone here." "Not alone," Benjamin found himself saying. "San Elizario is a good town, full of good people. They will help you get on your feet." "I have no money," Rebecca said, and he could hear the desperation creeping into her voice. "Everything I had was in the wagon, and when I went back in my mind, I remember the driver took the strong box. I have nothing but the clothes I was wearing." "Then we will figure something out," Benjamin said with more confidence than he felt. "Let me talk to some folks in town. There must be work somewhere, or at least a place for you to stay until you can get established." "Why are you being so kind to me?" Rebecca asked, looking at him with those extraordinary green eyes. "You do not know me." Benjamin thought about that for a moment. "Maybe because out here we have to look out for each other," he said. "The desert does not care about our plans or our problems. It will kill you just as soon as look at you. If we do not help each other survive, then what is the point of any of it?" Rebecca reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you, Benjamin, truly." The touch of her hand sent warmth spreading through his chest, and Benjamin knew in that moment that he was in trouble. He had fallen for this woman, this stranger he had known for less than a day, and there was no going back from it. Over the next 3 days, Benjamin became a regular visitor to Dr. Morrison's house. He would stop by in the morning before work and again in the evening after finishing his duties at the ranch. Each visit, he would find Rebecca a little stronger, a little more like herself, and they would talk for hours about everything and nothing. Rebecca told him about her life in St. Louis, about her marriage to a banker named Daniel who had been kind but much older, a marriage arranged by her father to settle debts. She spoke of how Daniel had been good to her, but how there had never been passion between them, how his death had left her feeling more relieved than grief-stricken, and how guilty that made her feel. Benjamin shared his own story, how he had come to Texas from Tennessee after the war ended, how he had been only 15 when he left home, looking for adventure and freedom. He told her about working cattle drives, about learning the hard way how to survive in the unforgiving landscape, about eventually settling in San Elizario, because it felt like the kind of place where a man could build a life. "You have family back in Tennessee?" Rebecca asked during one of their evening conversations. "My father died in the war," Benjamin said. "My mother remarried a man I could not stand, so I left. I have a sister somewhere, married off when she was 16 to some farmer. I have not heard from her in years." "That must be lonely," Rebecca said softly. "It was," Benjamin admitted. "But I have made a life here. The folks at the ranch, they are like family now, and San Elizario, it is a good town. People care about each other." As he spoke, Benjamin realized he was trying to sell her on staying, trying to give her reasons to build a life here. The thought of her leaving, of returning to St. Louis or moving on to some other town, made his chest ache. On the 4th day, Dr. Morrison declared Rebecca well enough to leave his care. Benjamin had been working behind the scenes, talking to people around town, trying to find a solution to Rebecca's situation. His efforts bore fruit when Mrs. Patterson agreed to let Rebecca stay at the boarding house in exchange for help with cooking and cleaning. "It is not charity," Mrs. Patterson insisted when Rebecca tried to thank her. "I genuinely need the help. My arthritis has been getting worse, and keeping up with all those boarders is more than I can manage alone. You would be doing me a favor." Rebecca had tears in her eyes as she agreed, and Benjamin helped her move into a small room on the 2nd floor of the boarding house. It was modest but clean, with a window that looked out over the main street of San Elizario. That evening, Mrs. Patterson insisted that Rebecca join everyone for dinner, and the boarding house dining room buzzed with conversation as the residents welcomed the newcomer. There was Mr. Patterson, of course, and 3 other regular boarders. A school teacher named Miss Harriet Donovan, a young prospector named Thomas Reed who was always searching for silver in the nearby mountains, and an elderly man named Frank Wilson who had been a frontier scout in his younger days. They were all curious about Rebecca, but they asked their questions kindly, and Benjamin could see her relaxing as the meal progressed, laughing at Frank's tall tales and listening intently to Harriet's stories about teaching children on the frontier. After dinner, Benjamin walked Rebecca to the mission church. The evening air was cooling, a relief after the heat of the day, and the stars were beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. "I wanted to show you something," Benjamin said as they approached the church. He led her inside, where candles flickered in the quiet space, casting dancing shadows on the adobe walls. The church was simple but beautiful, with wooden pews and a hand-carved altar. "When I first came to San Elizario," Benjamin said, his voice soft in the sacred space, "I was angry at the world, angry at the war, at my stepfather, at God for taking my father. I came in here one night, ready to curse at the heavens, and Father Miguel found me. He did not preach at me or tell me my anger was wrong. He just sat with me, let me rage, and when I was done, he said something I have never forgotten." "What did he say?" Rebecca asked. "He said that being angry at God was all right, that God could handle it. But that staying angry, holding on to it like a treasure, that was poison. He said the only way to heal was to let other people in, to build connections, to be part of something bigger than my own pain." Rebecca looked at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Is that why you helped me?" "Because of what Father Miguel taught you, maybe," Benjamin admitted. "Or maybe I helped you because when I saw you lying there in the desert, something in my heart recognized something in yours. Maybe we were supposed to find each other." It was bold of him to say such a thing, and he half expected her to pull away, to remind him that she was a widow, that it had only been 6 months since her husband's death. But instead, she stepped closer, looking up at him with those green eyes that had haunted his dreams. "I think maybe we were," she said softly. They stood there in the candlelight, the air between them charged with possibility, and Benjamin wanted nothing more than to kiss her. But he held back, knowing it was too soon, that she needed time to heal and find her footing in this new place. "I should get you back to the boarding house," he said reluctantly. "Mrs. Patterson will worry." They walked back slowly, neither wanting the evening to end. At the door of the boarding house, Rebecca turned to him. "Thank you, Benjamin," she said, "for everything. For saving my life, for helping me find a place here, for your kindness. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "Just be happy," Benjamin said. "That is all the repayment I need." The next few weeks fell into a comfortable pattern. Benjamin continued his work at the McLaughlin Ranch, but he spent every spare moment in town, often finding excuses to stop by the boarding house. Rebecca thrived in her new role, her natural warmth and competence winning over not just Mrs. Patterson but everyone who met her. She had a gift for cooking, and soon the boarding house dinners became something of a local attraction, with her special dishes drawing compliments from all the residents. She also had a way with people, listening to their stories and offering advice or comfort as needed. Miss Donovan confided in her about a difficult student. Thomas Reed sought her counsel about whether to give up his prospecting dreams. Even crusty old Frank Wilson softened around her, sharing stories he claimed he had never told anyone else. Benjamin watched all of this with a mixture of pride and jealousy. He was proud to see her flourishing, to see the pale, desperate woman he had found in the desert transforming into this vibrant, beloved member of the community. But he was also jealous of the time others got to spend with her, of the easy way she laughed at Thomas Reed's jokes or listened to Frank Wilson's stories. He tried to tell himself he had no claim on her, that she was free to befriend whomever she chose, but his heart refused to listen to logic. One Saturday, the town organized a dance at the community hall, a monthly tradition that brought everyone together for music and socializing. Benjamin screwed up his courage and asked Rebecca if she would attend with him. "I would love to," she said, her face lighting up with pleasure. "But I have to warn you, I am a terrible dancer." "That makes 2 of us," Benjamin said with a grin. "We will stumble around together." The night of the dance, Benjamin put on his best shirt and trousers, polished his boots until they gleamed, and even tried to tame his unruly brown hair with some pomade. When he arrived at the boarding house to collect Rebecca, his breath caught in his throat. She was wearing a simple green dress that matched her eyes, borrowed from Miss Donovan, and she had pinned her dark hair up, leaving a few curls to frame her face. She looked beautiful, and Benjamin had to remind himself to breathe. "You look lovely," he managed to say. "You clean up pretty well yourself, Cowboy," she said with a teasing smile. The community hall was packed with people from San Elizario and the surrounding ranches. A small band played fiddle music in the corner, and the air was filled with laughter and conversation. Benjamin led Rebecca into the room, acutely aware of the curious looks they were receiving. They danced, and true to her word, Rebecca was not particularly graceful. But neither was Benjamin, and they laughed together as they stepped on each other's toes and tried to keep up with the faster songs. During a slower song, Benjamin held her close, breathing in the scent of lavender from her hair, feeling the warmth of her hand in his. "I am glad you found me in the desert," Rebecca said quietly, her head resting against his shoulder. "So am I," Benjamin replied, tightening his arms around her. As the evening wore on, Benjamin noticed Thomas Reed watching them with a frown. The young prospector had been particularly attentive to Rebecca lately, often staying late after dinner to talk with her. Benjamin felt a surge of possessive anger but pushed it down. He had no right to feel that way. During a break in the dancing, Thomas approached them, his expression determined. "Miss Ashford," he said formally, "I was hoping you might do me the honor of the next dance." Rebecca looked at Benjamin, and he could see the question in her eyes. He forced himself to nod, to smile as if it did not matter, and watched as Thomas led her onto the dance floor. "You are going to lose her if you do not stake your claim," said a voice beside him. Benjamin turned to find Frank Wilson standing there, a cup of punch in his gnarled hand. "I do not know what you mean," Benjamin said stiffly. "Do not play dumb with me, son," Frank said. "I have been around long enough to recognize a man in love. You have been mooning over that girl since the day you brought her to town." "But Thomas Reed, he is young and eager, and he is not afraid to show his interest. If you do not speak up, you are going to regret it." Benjamin watched Rebecca dancing with Thomas, saw the way the younger man smiled at her, and felt his heart clench. Frank was right. He could not keep pretending his feelings did not exist, could not keep telling himself it was too soon, or that he had no right to pursue her. When the dance ended, Benjamin strode across the floor, intercepting Rebecca before Thomas could claim another dance. "Miss Ashford," he said formally, aware that they had an audience, "might I have a word with you outside?" Rebecca looked surprised but nodded. "Of course." They stepped out into the cool night air, and Benjamin led her away from the hall toward the quiet darkness near the church. His heart was pounding and his mouth felt dry. "Benjamin," Rebecca said, sounding concerned. "Is something wrong?" "Yes," he said, then shook his head. "No, I do not know. I need to tell you something, and I do not know if it is the right time or if I should wait longer, but I cannot keep it inside anymore." "Tell me what?" she asked, stepping closer. "I am in love with you," Benjamin said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I have been since the moment I saw you in the desert, maybe even before I saw your face, when you were just a woman who needed help. I know it has not been long, and I know you are still mourning your husband, and I have no right to ask anything of you. But watching you dance with Thomas Reed, seeing him look at you the way he does, I realized I could not stay silent anymore. I love you, Rebecca. I want to court you properly if you will let me. I want to build a life with you here in San Elizario. And if you do not feel the same way, if it is too soon or if your heart is still with your late husband, I will understand. But I had to tell you. I had to let you know." He ran out of words and stood there, chest heaving, waiting for her response. Rebecca was silent for a long moment, and Benjamin felt his heart sinking, certain he had ruined everything with his impulsive confession. Then she laughed, a bright, joyous sound that cut through the night. "What is funny?" Benjamin asked, confused and a little hurt. "You," Rebecca said, still laughing. "You beautiful, wonderful fool. I have been waiting for you to say something for weeks. I thought maybe you did not feel anything beyond friendship, that maybe I was reading things into your kindness that were not there. I kept hoping, kept looking for signs, but you were always so proper, so careful not to push." "You mean," Benjamin said, hope rising in his chest, "you feel the same way?" "Yes," Rebecca said, and now tears were streaming down her face, mixing with her laughter. "I fell in love with you when you gave me water in the desert, when you sacrificed your own safety for mine. Every day since then, I have fallen deeper. You make me laugh, you make me feel safe, you make me want to build a future instead of just surviving each day. I love you, Benjamin Carter." Benjamin let out a whoop of joy and swept her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. When he set her down, he cupped her face in his hands, looking into her eyes. "May I kiss you?" he asked. "Please," she breathed. Their lips met, and it was like coming home after a long journey, like water after days in the desert, like everything good and right in the world condensed into a single perfect moment. Benjamin poured everything he felt into that kiss, all his love and hope and dreams for the future, and Rebecca kissed him back with equal passion. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Benjamin rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "Court you properly, ask for permission to marry you, all of it." "Permission from whom?" Rebecca asked with a small smile. "I have no family." "Then I will ask the whole town," Benjamin said. "San Elizario brought us together. Let them bless our union." And so the next day, Benjamin went to Father Miguel and shared his intentions. The priest, who had watched Benjamin grow from an angry boy into a good man, gave his blessing readily. Benjamin then spoke to Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, who were delighted, and to Dr. Morrison, who simply said he had seen it coming from the first day. Word spread quickly through the small town, and the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. People who had watched Rebecca integrate into their community, who had seen how happy she made Benjamin and how happy he made her, celebrated the news. There was a collective sense of pride, as if the town itself had played matchmaker. The only person who seemed less than thrilled was Thomas Reid, but even he came around after a few days, shaking Benjamin's hand and wishing him well. "I should have moved faster," Thomas admitted with a rueful smile. "But the truth is, watching you two together, it is clear you belong to each other. I hope you will be very happy." With the town's blessing, Benjamin began courting Rebecca in earnest. He would bring her wildflowers he found on the range, would take her on long walks along the Rio Grande, would sit with her on the porch of the boarding house in the evenings, talking and dreaming about the future. Rebecca, for her part, showed her love in dozens of small ways. She would pack special lunches for Benjamin to take to the ranch, would mend his worn shirts, would save him the choicest portions at dinner. She also began teaching him to read better, as his education had been interrupted by the war, and Benjamin threw himself into the lessons, determined to be worthy of this educated, capable woman who had somehow chosen him. 3 months after their first kiss, Benjamin knew he was ready. He had been saving every penny he could, and he finally had enough to buy a simple gold band from the traveling jeweler who passed through town quarterly. He planned his proposal carefully, wanting it to be special. He took Rebecca back to the spot where he had found her, riding out early one Sunday morning when the desert was still cool and beautiful. Rebecca was initially reluctant to return to the place where she had nearly died, but Benjamin insisted it was important. When they reached the spot, Benjamin dismounted and helped Rebecca down from Copper. The desert looked different in the early morning light, peaceful rather than threatening, and the air was filled with the sound of birds' song. "I wanted to bring you here," Benjamin said, "because this is where our story began. This is where I found the most precious thing in my life, even though I did not know it yet. I was just a cowboy trying to do the right thing, and you were a stranger in desperate need. But God or fate, or whatever you want to call it, brought us together here, in this spot." He knelt in the dust, pulling the ring from his pocket. "Rebecca Ashford, you have brought more joy into my life than I ever thought possible. You have made me want to be a better man, to build something lasting, to have a family and a future. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Rebecca was crying again, but these were happy tears. "Yes," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Benjamin slipped the ring onto her finger, and they sealed the engagement with a kiss that tasted of salt tears and joy. The wedding took place 2 months later, in the mission church where Benjamin had first told Rebecca about finding his place in San Elizario. Father Miguel performed the ceremony, and the entire town turned out to witness the union. Mrs. Patterson had helped Rebecca make a beautiful white dress, and Miss Donovan had woven wildflowers into her hair. Benjamin wore his best suit, borrowed from Mr. Patterson, and Frank Wilson stood up as his best man. As Benjamin and Rebecca exchanged their vows, promising to love and honor each other for all their days, there was not a dry eye in the church. This was more than just a wedding. It was a celebration of community, of the way San Elizario took care of its own, of how a single act of kindness in the desert had blossomed into something beautiful. At the reception, held in the community hall, the whole town came together to celebrate. There was food and music and dancing, and Benjamin held his new wife close, marveling at how his life had changed in such a short time. "Happy," he murmured into her ear as they swayed to a slow song. "Happier than I ever thought I could be," Rebecca replied, looking up at him with those green eyes that still took his breath away. But the story of Benjamin and Rebecca's love did not just affect them. Their union had planted a seed in San Elizario, a reminder of the power of compassion and community. And that seed was about to bear unexpected fruit. A week after the wedding, a family arrived in town, looking travel-worn and desperate. The Hendersons were farmers from Kansas, driven south by failed crops and mounting debts. They had 3 young children and barely enough money to feed them, and they were looking for any kind of work or opportunity. In the past, San Elizario might have directed them to move along, might have said there was not enough opportunity in such a small town. But remembering how the community had rallied around Rebecca, several townspeople stepped forward to help. Mr. McLaughlin, who owned the ranch where Benjamin worked, offered Mr. Henderson a job as a farmhand. Mrs. Patterson said the family could stay at the boarding house until they saved enough for their own place, and she would work out a payment plan they could afford. Dr. Morrison examined the children for free, making sure they had not picked up any illnesses during their journey. The Hendersons were overwhelmed by the kindness, just as Rebecca had been. And like Rebecca, they worked hard to integrate into the community and pay forward the generosity they had received. This became a pattern. Over the following months, more travelers in need passed through San Elizario, and each time, the town rallied to help. A widow with 2 children was given a job at the general store. A young man injured in a riding accident received free medical care and a place to stay while he healed. An elderly couple whose wagon had broken down were helped by the town's carpenter, who fixed their wagon and refused payment. Word began to spread across Texas that San Elizario was a place where people helped each other, where strangers were treated with kindness and compassion. The town began to grow as more people chose to settle there, drawn by the sense of community and mutual support. Benjamin and Rebecca watched all of this with amazement and pride. Their love story had somehow inspired an entire town to be better, to reach out to those in need, to build something stronger together than any of them could alone. "We started something," Rebecca said one evening as she and Benjamin sat on the porch of their small house, which Benjamin had been building with help from the other men in town. "That day you gave me water. You started a ripple that is still spreading." "We started it together," Benjamin corrected, taking her hand. "I just did what anyone should do. You were the one who showed everyone what a difference that kindness could make." Rebecca smiled and placed his hand on her stomach, where a small bump was just beginning to show. "And now we are starting something else," she said softly. Benjamin's eyes widened. "You mean, I am pregnant," Rebecca confirmed, laughing at his stunned expression. "We are going to have a baby, Benjamin." Joy flooded through Benjamin, so intense it brought tears to his eyes. He pulled Rebecca into his arms, holding her close, feeling the miracle of new life between them. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you so much." The news of Rebecca's pregnancy brought another wave of celebration through San Elizario. Mrs. Patterson immediately began knitting baby clothes. Miss Donovan offered to help teach the child when it was old enough. Frank Wilson carved a beautiful wooden cradle. The entire town, it seemed, was invested in this baby, this new life that represented the future of their community. As Rebecca's pregnancy progressed, Benjamin found himself working harder than ever, driven by the need to provide for his growing family. Mr. McLaughlin, impressed by Benjamin's dedication and skill, promoted him to ranch foreman, a position that came with better pay and more responsibility. Benjamin also began attending reading lessons more seriously, working with Rebecca in the evenings to improve his skills. He wanted to be able to read to his child, to help with schoolwork, to be a father his son or daughter could be proud of. "You are going to be an amazing father," Rebecca told him one night as they lay in bed, her head resting on his chest, his hand on her swollen belly. "I hope so," Benjamin said. "I want to give our child everything I did not have growing up. A stable home, two parents who love each other, a community that cares. I want them to know they are wanted and loved." "They will," Rebecca assured him, "because they will have you." On a warm spring evening in 1879, Rebecca went into labor. Benjamin paced outside their bedroom while Dr. Morrison and Mrs. Patterson attended to her, his heart racing with fear and anticipation. Every cry from Rebecca made him want to break down the door to be with her, but Mrs. Patterson had firmly told him he would just be in the way. After what felt like an eternity but was really only 6 hours, Benjamin heard a new sound, the sharp, indignant wail of a newborn baby. Moments later, Dr. Morrison emerged, looking tired but happy. "You have a son," he announced. "A healthy baby boy, and your wife is fine, just tired. You can go in now." Benjamin burst into the room and found Rebecca propped up in bed, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked exhausted but radiant, and when she looked up at him, her smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Benjamin approached on shaky legs and looked down at the small red face peeking out from the blanket. The baby had stopped crying and was looking around with unfocused eyes, one tiny fist waving in the air. Benjamin felt his heart expand with a love so fierce and immediate it took his breath away. "He is perfect," Benjamin whispered, gently touching the baby's soft cheek. "You are perfect." "What should we name him?" Rebecca asked. They had discussed names for months, debating various options. But looking down at his son, Benjamin knew exactly what the boy's name should be. Miguel, he said. Miguel Carter, after Father Miguel, who helped me find my place here, who taught me about community and compassion. Those lessons led me to you and to this moment. It feels right to honor that. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Miguel, she repeated, it is perfect. Father Miguel himself was deeply moved when they asked him to baptize the baby and told him the child's name. The baptism took place at the mission church, with the entire town in attendance, and afterward, there was a celebration that lasted well into the evening. As Benjamin held his son and watched his wife laughing with their friends and neighbors, he thought back to the angry, lost boy he had been when he first came to San Elizario. He thought about the day he had found Rebecca in the desert, how giving her water from his canteen had seemed like such a small thing at the time. But that one small act of kindness had changed everything. It had brought him a wife, a family, and helped transform an entire community. San Elizario had become known throughout Texas as a place of compassion and mutual support, a town where strangers were welcomed and helped, where people looked out for each other. Life settled into a new rhythm after Miguel's birth. Benjamin continued his work as ranch foreman, while Rebecca cared for their son and maintained their home. But she also found time to be involved in the community, helping to establish a women's group that organized assistance for families in need and coordinated the town's charitable efforts. The community continued to grow and thrive. The success of their model of mutual support attracted more settlers, and San Elizario evolved from a small waypoint into a proper town. A new school was built, and Miss Donovan became its headmistress. The general store expanded. A second doctor, a young man named Peter Hughes, came to assist Dr. Morrison, who was getting on in years. Through it all, Benjamin and Rebecca remained at the heart of the community, their love story serving as a reminder of what was possible when people chose kindness over indifference. When Miguel was 2 years old, Rebecca became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was harder, and she spent the last 2 months on bed rest, following Dr. Morrison's strict orders. Benjamin worried constantly, remembering how he had nearly lost her once in the desert, terrified at the thought of losing her now. But Rebecca was strong, and when the time came, she delivered a healthy baby girl. They named her Grace, because Benjamin said that was what Rebecca had brought into his life, grace and love and purpose. The years passed, marked by the rhythms of ranch work and family life, by community celebrations and the inevitable sorrows that came with living. Frank Wilson passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, and the whole town mourned the loss of the old scout who had befriended so many. Mrs. Patterson's arthritis eventually forced her to sell the boarding house, though she remained in San Elizario, cared for by the community she had served for so many years. Benjamin and Rebecca watched their children grow, teaching them the values that had built San Elizario into what it was. They taught Miguel and Grace about the importance of helping others, about community and compassion, about the ripple effects of kindness. One summer evening when Miguel was 8 and Grace was 6, the family sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Miguel, who was curious about everything, asked how his parents had met. Benjamin and Rebecca exchanged a look, smiling at the shared memory. Then Benjamin told the story, starting with the day he had found a stranger dying in the desert and had chosen to share his water with her. "You saved Mama's life," Miguel asked, his eyes wide. "Your father is a hero," Grace said with conviction. "I am not a hero," Benjamin said, as he always did when people tried to call him that. I just did what anyone should do. I saw someone who needed help and I helped them. But not everyone would have done that, Rebecca said, reaching over to take his hand. That is what made it special. Your father gave me more than water that day. He gave me hope and a future and a family. And in doing so, he helped build something bigger than both of us. He helped build a community founded on caring for each other. Is that why people always come to our town when they need help? Grace asked. Yes, Rebecca said, because San Elizario remembers that we all need help sometimes. We remember that the measure of a person is not how much they have, but how willing they are to share what they have with others. Miguel was quiet for a moment, thinking this over. Then he said, "When I grow up, I want to help people like Papa did." "Me too," Grace chimed in. Benjamin felt his throat tighten with emotion. This, he thought, was the true legacy of that day in the desert. Not just his love for Rebecca, not just their family, but these children who had learned from their story and would carry those lessons forward into the future. As the years continued to pass, Benjamin and Rebecca's influence on San Elizario only grew. When Benjamin was 35, he was asked to serve on the town council, a position he accepted with the understanding that he would use it to ensure the town never lost sight of the values that had made it special. Under his influence, San Elizario established a formal charity fund, supported by small contributions from every family in town, to help travelers and new settlers get on their feet. They built a small guest house, managed by the church, where people in need could stay for free while they got established. They created a job board where locals could post work opportunities for newcomers. Rebecca, meanwhile, expanded the women's group into a powerful force for good in the community. They organized food drives, provided child care for working mothers, visited the sick and elderly, and generally ensured that no one in San Elizario fell through the cracks. Their work did not go unnoticed. A newspaper reporter from El Paso came to write a story about the town, about how a small community along the Rio Grande had become known as a place where kindness and mutual support were not just ideals but lived realities. The story ran in newspapers across Texas, and the legend of San Elizario grew. Through all of this, Benjamin and Rebecca's love remained the foundation of everything they did. They still stole moments together on the porch in the evenings, still looked at each other with the same wonder and affection they had felt in those early days. Their love had matured, deepened, becoming something richer and more complex than the initial passion, but no less powerful. "Do you ever regret it?" Benjamin asked Rebecca one night as they celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary. "Staying here instead of going back to the city, you could have had an easier life in St. Louis." Rebecca looked at him as if he had lost his mind. "Regret this?" "Regret you, our children, this life we have built? Never. Not for a single second. You gave me water in the desert, Benjamin, but you also gave me a home, a purpose, and a love I never dreamed was possible. How could I regret that?" "I love you," Benjamin said, pulling her close. "I will love you until the day I die and beyond." "And I love you," Rebecca replied. "You are my hero, whether you want to be called that or not. You are the best man I know." When Miguel was 16 and Grace was 14, Benjamin decided it was time to expand their family's holdings. He had saved enough money over the years to buy a small piece of land adjacent to the McLaughlin Ranch, and with Mr. McLaughlin's blessing, he began building his own cattle operation. It was hard work, requiring long hours and sacrifice, but Miguel was old enough now to help, and the boy threw himself into the work with enthusiasm. Working side by side with his son, teaching him about cattle and horses and the unforgiving nature of the land, Benjamin felt a sense of completion. He was passing on not just skills but values, not just a trade but a way of life. Grace, meanwhile, showed her mother's gift for connecting with people. She helped Rebecca with the women's group and seemed to have an intuitive understanding of what people needed, even when they did not say it aloud. She also inherited her mother's beauty, and by the time she was 16, she had no shortage of young men hoping to court her. "She reminds me of you," Benjamin told Rebecca, watching Grace charm a group of visitors to town. "She has your warmth, your ability to make everyone feel welcome." "She has your sense of justice," Rebecca countered, "and your stubbornness. Did you know she confronted Tom Miller last week about how he was treating his hired hands? She told him that San Elizario was built on the principle of treating people fairly, and if he could not do that, maybe he should take his business elsewhere." Benjamin laughed. "What did Tom say?" "He gave his workers a raise," Rebecca said with a smile. "Our daughter is a force to be reckoned with." In 1891, when Benjamin was 38 and Rebecca was 36, San Elizario faced its greatest challenge. A severe drought struck the region, drying up streams and making the Rio Grande run low. Crops failed, cattle died, and many families faced ruin. Some people talked about leaving, about seeking opportunities elsewhere. But Benjamin stood up at a town meeting and reminded everyone of what they had built together. "We are not just a town," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "We are a community. We are people who have chosen to stand together to help each other through the hard times. Yes, this drought is terrible. Yes, we are all suffering. But if we leave now, if we scatter to the winds, we lose something far more valuable than crops or cattle. We lose each other. We lose what makes San Elizario special." "But what can we do?" someone called out. "We cannot make it rain." "No," Rebecca said, standing up beside her husband. "But we can share what we have. Families with wells can provide water to those without. Those with food stores can help feed those who are running low. We can pool our resources, work together, and survive this together. That is what we have always done. That is who we are." Her words struck a chord, and the community rallied once more. Families opened their wells to neighbors. Those with food shared it freely. Benjamin organized work crews to dig new wells and to bring water from the Rio Grande to the most desperate areas. The women's group, led by Rebecca and Grace, coordinated food distribution and ensured no one went hungry. It was hard, grueling work, and there were times when Benjamin wondered if they could really make it through. But the community held together, refusing to abandon either the town or each other. And when the rains finally came that fall, breaking the drought, the collective sigh of relief could be heard throughout San Elizario. The drought brought the community even closer together. People who had weathered the crisis side by side had forged bonds that would last a lifetime. And once again, the story of San Elizario's resilience spread, adding to the town's growing reputation. In the years that followed, the town continued to prosper. Miguel grew into a fine young man, taking over more and more of the cattle operation and proving himself to be as skilled and hardworking as his father. At 21, he married a girl from a neighboring ranch, a spirited young woman named Catherine who fit into the Carter family as if she had always been there. Grace, meanwhile, became a teacher, working alongside Miss Donovan at the school and bringing her mother's compassion and her father's sense of justice to her work with the children. She married at 23, choosing a young doctor named James who had come to San Elizario to work with Dr. Morrison, and had fallen in love with both the town and the beautiful, passionate young woman who embodied everything it stood for. Benjamin and Rebecca became grandparents, and they embraced their new role with joy. They spoiled their grandchildren shamelessly, telling them stories and teaching them the same lessons they had taught their own children. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the town threw them a massive celebration. The community hall was packed with people, many of whom had their own stories of how Benjamin and Rebecca's example had changed their lives. There were families who had been taken in and given a fresh start, travelers who had received help when they needed it most, and countless people who had simply been inspired by the couple's love and dedication to each other and to the community. Father Miguel, now elderly but still sharp, gave a speech that brought tears to many eyes. 25 years ago, he said, I married two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances. Benjamin was a cowboy, Rebecca was a stranger dying in the desert, and all that connected them was an act of kindness, a shared canteen of water. But from that small seed grew something extraordinary. Their love has been a light to this community, showing us all what is possible when we choose compassion over indifference, when we choose to help rather than to walk on by. Benjamin and Rebecca, you have given San Elizario a gift beyond measure. You have shown us how to be better people. The applause was thunderous, and Benjamin felt overwhelmed by the outpouring of affection. He stood up, Rebecca by his side, and looked out at the sea of familiar faces, at the community they had helped build. I do not have fancy words, Benjamin said, his voice rough with emotion. I am just a cowboy who did what seemed right at the time, but I want you all to know that the real gift has been what you have given me. You gave Rebecca a home when she had nowhere to go. You welcomed us, you celebrated with us, you stood by us through hard times. You showed me that people are capable of extraordinary kindness if we just give them the chance. San Elizario is not special because of me or Rebecca. It is special because of all of you, because of the choices you make every day to care for each other. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything. Rebecca took his hand, squeezing it tightly, and added, Benjamin found me in the desert and gave me water, but all of you gave me a life worth living. You gave me friendship, community, and purpose. Our love story is really the story of this town, of how caring for one stranger can ripple out and change everything. We love you all. As the party continued into the night, Benjamin and Rebecca slipped away to take a walk under the stars, just as they had done so many times before. They walked to the mission church and sat on the bench outside, looking up at the vast Texas sky. It has been a good life, Benjamin said softly. The best, Rebecca agreed. When I think about that day in the desert when I was lying there thinking I was going to die, I could never have imagined this. All of this joy, all of this love. You saved my life, Benjamin, but you also gave me a reason to live. You gave me the same, Benjamin said. Before I found you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You made me want to build something, to create something lasting. You and our family, this community, it is all because you came into my life. They sat in comfortable silence, these two people who had built a life together from the most unpromising of beginnings. Two strangers in the desert had become partners, lovers, spouses, parents, and the heart of a thriving community. As they aged, Benjamin and Rebecca gradually stepped back from their leadership roles in San Elizario, letting the younger generation take over. But their influence remained, their story passed down to children and grandchildren, becoming part of the town's folklore. Miguel took over the family ranch, expanding it and making it one of the most successful operations in the region. But he never forgot the lessons his parents had taught him, and he was known for treating his workers fairly and helping neighboring ranchers in times of need. Grace continued teaching, shaping young minds and passing on the values of compassion and community. Her own children, 3 in number, grew up hearing the story of how their grandfather had saved their grandmother in the desert, and how that one act of kindness had changed so many lives. Benjamin and Rebecca lived to see their children's children have children of their own, to see San Elizario grow from a small town into a thriving community of several thousand people. The town had a real hospital now, multiple schools, a proper sheriff's office, and a reputation that extended far beyond Texas. But through all the growth and change, San Elizario never forgot its founding principle, that people should help each other, that kindness matters, that a community is only as strong as its willingness to care for its weakest members. And at the heart of that principle was always the story of the cowboy who shared his water with a thirsty stranger. On a warm spring evening in 1903, Benjamin Carter passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 50. He had lived a full, rich life, surrounded by love and respected by everyone who knew him. The entire town turned out for his funeral, and Father Miguel's successor spoke movingly about the legacy Benjamin had left behind. Rebecca lived for another 5 years, remaining active in the community and surrounded by her children and grandchildren. When she joined Benjamin in 1908, at the age of 53, having never fully recovered from a bout of pneumonia, San Elizario mourned the loss of both its founders. But the legacy of Benjamin and Rebecca Carter lived on. The charity fund they had established still helped newcomers get on their feet. The guest house they had built still provided shelter for travelers in need. The values they had embodied still guided the community's choices and actions. And every year, on the anniversary of the day Benjamin found Rebecca in the desert, San Elizario held a celebration. People gathered to share stories of kindness, to help those in need, to remember that even the smallest act of compassion can change the world. Miguel and Grace both lived long lives, raising their families in San Elizario, and passing on their parents' story to new generations. The cattle ranch continued to thrive, and Grace's school produced students who went on to become teachers, doctors, lawyers, and leaders in their own right, all carrying with them the lessons they had learned about community and compassion. The story of how a cowboy shared his water with a thirsty stranger, and how her gratitude brought an entire community together, became more than just a local legend. It became a symbol of what was possible when people chose kindness, when they decided that caring for strangers was not just a nice thing to do but a fundamental responsibility. In the end, Benjamin Carter had been right all those years ago when he had told Rebecca that out in the desert, people had to look out for each other, or there was no point to any of it. He and Rebecca had proven that caring for one person could ripple out in ways impossible to predict, touching hundreds and eventually thousands of lives. Their love story, born from a simple act of mercy in the harsh Texas desert, had transformed not just 2 lives but an entire community. And that community, in turn, had become a beacon of hope and kindness in a world that often felt harsh and unforgiving. San Elizario continued to grow and prosper, always remembering its roots, always honoring the memory of the cowboy and the stranger who had shown them all what was possible. The Mission Church, where Benjamin and Rebecca had married, where their children had been baptized, where their funerals had been held, became a shrine of sorts, a place people visited to remember that love and kindness were the most powerful forces in the world. And somewhere in whatever comes after this life, Benjamin and Rebecca Carter were together still, their love eternal, their legacy secure, their story complete. They had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances, had built a love that lasted a lifetime, and had used that love to change the world around them for the better. It was, in the end, a simple story. A cowboy shared his water with a thirsty stranger. She survived, they fell in love, and they built a life together. But that simple story had become something extraordinary, a testament to the power of compassion, the strength of community, and the enduring nature of true love. The years continued to roll on, and San Elizario evolved with the times, but it never forgot where it came from, never forgot the two people whose love had been the seed from which the whole community had grown. Their names were spoken with reverence, their story told and retold, their example followed by generation after generation. And in that way, Benjamin Carter and Rebecca Ashford Carter lived on, not just in memory but in action, not just in story but in the lives of everyone who chose kindness over indifference, who chose to help a stranger, who chose to build community rather than walk alone. Their love story, born in the desert heat, nurtured by a small town's compassion, and brought to fruition through years of dedication and partnership, was truly a story for the ages. It proved that love could overcome any obstacle, that community could achieve what individuals could not, and that the simple choice to help another person could change everything. The Carter family continued to be a pillar of San Elizario society for generations. Miguel's descendants ran the ranch with the same integrity and compassion their great-grandfather had shown. Grace's descendants became teachers, doctors, and community leaders, always guided by the principles Rebecca and Benjamin had lived by. In 1928, on the 50th anniversary of the day Benjamin found Rebecca in the desert, San Elizario erected a monument in the town square. It was a simple stone marker with a canteen carved into it, and beneath that, an inscription, "In memory of Benjamin Carter and Rebecca Ashford Carter, who showed us that the simple act of sharing water with a stranger can change the world." May we always remember their example and strive to live by their principles of compassion, community, and love. The monument became a gathering place, a spot where people came to reflect, to remember, and to recommit themselves to the values that made San Elizario special. Young couples would visit it before their weddings. Parents would bring their children to teach them the story, and travelers passing through would stop to read the inscription and learn about the remarkable couple who had founded this remarkable town. The story of Benjamin and Rebecca Carter spread far beyond San Elizario, becoming a legend of the Old West. Books were written about them, though the facts were often embellished and romanticized. But the core truth remained, that two people had found each other in desperate circumstances, had fallen deeply in love, and had used that love to build something that outlasted them both. Their grandchildren and great-grandchildren often gathered to share memories passed down through the generations. They told stories of Benjamin's kindness and work ethic, of Rebecca's warmth and strength, of the deep love the two had shared that had been evident to everyone who knew them. One great-granddaughter, named Rebecca in honor of her great-grandmother, became a writer and penned the definitive account of their story, based on letters and journals that had been preserved through the years. Her book, published in 1935, became a bestseller and introduced the Carter love story to people across the country. Through it all, San Elizario remained true to the vision Benjamin and Rebecca had helped create. The town continued to welcome strangers, to help those in need, to function as a true community where people looked out for each other. And while the world around it changed dramatically, with automobiles replacing horses and telephones connecting people across vast distances, the fundamental values remained constant. The legacy of that one cowboy sharing his water with one thirsty stranger continued to ripple outward, touching lives in ways both big and small. Every person helped in San Elizario, every act of kindness performed, every stranger welcomed, was a continuation of what Benjamin and Rebecca had started. And so the story came full circle, From a desperate moment in the desert to a thriving community built on love and compassion. From two strangers to a legacy that would last forever. Benjamin Carter and Rebecca Ashford Carter had proven that one person can make a difference, that love can conquer all, and that the simple choice to be kind can change the world. Their story was complete, their ending happy and closed, their love eternal. They had lived fully, loved deeply, raised a family, built a community, and left behind a legacy that would never be forgotten. In a world often marked by hardship and cruelty, they had chosen kindness and love, and in doing so had made their corner of the world immeasurably better. It was, truly, a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West of 1878, nurtured through decades of partnership, and living on forever in the hearts and actions of those they had touched. Benjamin and Rebecca Carter had shown everyone what was possible when you chose love over fear, compassion over indifference, and community over isolation. And that lesson, more than anything else, was their true legacy, the gift they gave not just to San Elizario, but to everyone who heard their story and was inspired to live better, love deeper, and care more for the people around them. The end of their earthly journey was just the beginning of their eternal impact, and the love story that began with a cowboy sharing water with a thirsty stranger would echo through time, inspiring countless others to be better, to do better, to love better. And in that way, Benjamin and Rebecca Carter would truly live forever.